always implies the oversight of God. All right, let's go over to page number 103. Again, talking about Ezekiel 17. And I just want to read this line right here. The revelatory formula, this is Ezekiel 17, 11 to 15, established the link to the foregoing fable. Ezekiel was commanded to narrate the meaning of the fable's events to the rebellious breed, associating the vine's rebellion and covenant violation with the audience in Babylon. Okay? Now the people who were there with Ezekiel hear this story, and they're going to, the first thing they're going to think is, well, I'm here in Babylon. I've been taken captive. I don't have a temple. I don't have a sacrifice. I don't have a king. I have a king in exile. I have a king in captivity. But what Ezekiel is doing is he's showing that the rebellious breed is also with the audience in Babylon. This is an in-your-face kind of prophecy. It's particularly important that the exiles in Babylon hear this. Do you remember what we talked about last week when we were talking about the dreams that you encourage your people to dream? Do you remember that? Jeremiah's prophecy, I'm sorry, it was 2 weeks ago, when Jeremiah was telling the people, do not believe those who are dreaming dreams, because they are not sent from me, says the Lord. I, the Lord, have nothing to do with those dreams that they are dreaming. Don't listen to Ahab and Zedekiah, because they will be roasted alive, because they're putting words in your mouth that are not correct. So the people in Babylon need to hear this parable, allegory, lament in Ezekiel 17 and 19. All right, I'm going to skip that one. One more. All right, I'm on page number 105. And I'm in the first major paragraph. Ezekiel 17 focused on Nebuchadnezzar's installation of Zedekiah under oath. Now what this means is it's a covenant. It's a covenant requirement. Nebuchadnezzar forces Zedekiah to swear a covenant. Nebuchadnezzar would have summoned his god, Nebu, and he would have summoned Zedekiah's god. Who is Zedekiah's god? Who is the God of Zedekiah? Yahweh, right. So both gods would have been there, summoned to enforce the terms of the covenant. Rebellion against the covenant of Babylon was a violation of Yahweh's covenant. The inactivity of the topmost bough, that is the one who is clipped off and taken to the land of traitors, that would be Jehoiakim, was more positive than the rebellion of the seed royal. If exile was the fate of Jeconiah when he fought against Nebuchadnezzar, though he merited the more exalted title of Melech, what are the prospects for Zedekiah, who's never explicitly termed Melech, but instead is called a Nagid by Ezekiel? If you disobey the terms of the covenant, things will not go well for you. Now, do you have any comment about this? Yes.
I have a question. How the covenant with Babylon was the covenant of Yahweh?
Yes, it is.
How?
And how is that? How is a covenant with Nebuchadnezzar at the same time a covenant with Yahweh? Who can help me out with this? You got any ideas? Catherine, I saw that hand. Are you volunteering? You're not volunteering, you're just scratching your head.
I am.
Okay, now you're volunteering. Okay. Tell me how a covenant with Nebuchadnezzar could be interpreted to be a covenant with Yahweh.
Because there's some theory of concurrence.
That's right.
So God is in control of everything. He
Right.
supersedes it. So anything happening is secondary, and He's allowing, and so He allowed the children of Israel to be exiled and punished, and He's using Nebuchadnezzar is a vessel of God and a dishonorable vessel that He's
Absolutely.
using, but it's all back to His will.
2 weeks ago. Do you remember, Christopher, we were with you?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, do you remember that we had the Gala? A Gala is an exile. And Yahweh, Hiphiel, Gala, he caused to exile the children of Israel. Okay, what were you going to say, Christopher?
No, just me.
Oh, come on, you're going to jump in with something really profound.
No, that was just my reference of.
Okay, all right.
Has got a little bit.
Yeah, and so the king who puts Zedekiah on the throne, he is Hiphiel Melech to Zedekiah. He's causing Zedekiah to be king. When he does that, now he takes the man who would be king, he is the uncle of Jehoiakim. So he's not in the direct line of succession. Normally, by primogeniture, father, son, father, son, father, son. That's the way the lineup goes. It was Jehoahaz, the younger brother of Jehoiakim, who's put on the throne by the Haaretz, the people of the land. As soon as Pharaoh comes to town, he undoes Jehoahaz, ships him off to Egypt, where he dies. The Pharaoh puts this guy, Eliakim, on the throne and changes his name to Jehoiakim. Okay, Jehoiakim. Then Nebuchadnezzar comes to town. He's more important than the Pharaoh, so he has a covenant signed between Jehoiakim and Nebuchadnezzar. Do not disobey me. Do not cease paying tribute. When you cease paying tribute, you're rebelling against me. So Jehoiakim submits for 3 years, and then he rebels. And eventually, Nebuchadnezzar comes to town to dispatch the unfaithful Jehoiakim. Meanwhile, Jehoiakim dies or is assassinated and given the burial of an ass, thrown outside the gates of Jerusalem. Jehoiakim comes to the throne. He's only on the throne 3 months before Nebuchadnezzar arrives in force. Jehoiakim gives up. While Jehoiakim is giving up, Nebuchadnezzar says to his advisors, all right, who are we going to put in charge? And his advisors say, well, we got this other guy. His name is Mattaniah. He's the uncle of the present king. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take all of the nobles. We're going to take all of the intelligentsia. We're going to take all the craftsmen. We're going to take all the bureaucrats. We're going to take everybody who's educated, and we're shipping them off to Babylon. Then we're going to take this guy who's left, more a puppet than an actual king, with his denuded group of people. We'll put him in charge, but we'll sign him to a covenant. All right, now, let me ask a question. When you do covenant, covenant is a bereath, right? Bereath. Not head north-south. Okay? You know what a bereath is, right? A covenant. How do you form a covenant? Do you make it, asa, or do you cut it, karat? Okay? You cut a covenant. What is it that you're actually cutting? You're cutting an animal. You cut an animal from snout to out. You lay the bloody pieces down and you walk through the blood. And you say, if I violate the covenant that we have cut, make me like this. And both kings would sign this covenant. They would normally have a deed. They normally have a record. But more than that, Nebuchadnezzar says, if I violate covenant, then may Nebo enforce this on me. Meanwhile, Zedekiah says, if I violate covenant, may Yahweh do this to me. Ezekiel 17 is all about what Zedekiah broke. It's not just a covenant with some pagan king. He broke covenant with the Lord. Zedekiah had walked the bloody trail. And now God is going to implement the punishment on Zedekiah for breaking covenant. Now, just so that we don't forget what happens to Zedekiah, all the way back in 2 Kings 24 and 25, what happened to Zedekiah when he broke the covenant with Nebuchadnezzar? What happens to him? Do you remember? He lasts 11 years on the throne of Jerusalem. 8 years into that 11, Nebuchadnezzar comes to town with his whole Chaldean army, and they surround and besiege the city. Finally, on the 14th of Nisan, which happens to be the day of Passover, on the 14th day of the 10th month, Nisan, they break through. What does Zedekiah do when they break through the wall? Who remembers their history?
He flees.
Ron, what does he do?
He flees, and they catch him, and he watches his sons be killed, and then they take out his eyes and they cart him off the battle.
Good. Now, let me just amplify one thing, just for graphic effect. Nebuchadnezzar comes to town, breaks through the outer wall, and Zedekiah flees. Do you know which direction he flees?
Towards Jericho.
Yes, but why is he going to Jericho? Which direction is he going to go?
Oh, he's going to go to Egypt.
He's going to Egypt. He's hightailing it, hoping he can make it to Egypt, who's the opposite of Babylon. He gets caught down somewhere south of Jerusalem. He's brought to Hamath, which is in present-day Syria, and just what Ron said. The first people who are slaughtered are his sons. So Zedekiah watches his sons, that should sit on the throne after him, be slaughtered. And then the nobles, the ones who advised him to appeal to Egypt, he watches them slaughtered. And then, lest he miss the point, his eyes are gouged out. Slaughtered. So sons, nobles, eyes slaughtered, then he is paraded in chains to Babylon. Off goes the blinded Zedekiah. What happens to Jerusalem? It too is slaughtered in fulfillment of the covenant that Zedekiah made. Okay, let's look at Ezekiel 17. Now, I'd really like to do this in Hebrew, but unfortunately that is just going to slow us down. We'll take a couple of notes out of our account and we'll look at the Hebrew, but let's just take a look at Ezekiel 17 in the English first. Let's see what's going on here. Now this is the New American Standard that I'm looking at. Ezekiel is told to do what? Son of man, here it is in the New American, propound a riddle. What is a riddle? Now, we've got some other versions. What are the other words that, instead of a riddle, what does some of the rest of your versions say? Do you have a proverb, allegory, a simile, a metaphor, a parable?
Allegory.
Okay? All right, that's all, something like that. Something that will represent what is going on in the... I'm looking now at the Tanakh. Propound a riddle and relate an allegory. That's what this says. Speak a parable. Okay, well, we've got the same idea, a riddle or an allegory, to the house of Israel. The first character is what? What does it say in verse number 3? What's the first character?
Eagle.
A great eagle. Okay. Now, we're not in the realm of humanity now. We've moved into this realm of animal here. It's not surprising that a riddle or a parable would use natural imagery. What the prophet is doing is very similar to what Eleanor Fortescue Bricktail does in this. She's got some kind of parable that she's illustrating. The fact that it is a parable or an allegory, it's unusual. And it should get some attention. So we've got the great eagle, and how does it describe? What does it say about the great eagle in verse 3?